或是老师上好人, or it means hi, how are you? I'm teacher Jericho and today we're going to discuss the historical background of Chinese literature. The Chinese literature reflects the political and social history of China. Its origin go back thousands of years and has often been sparked by philosophical questions about the meaning of life and how to live ethically in society and how to live in spiritual harmony with the natural order of the universe. The Chinese literature is one of the major literary heritage of the world, with an uninterrupted history of more than 3,000 years, dating back at least to the 14th century before Christ's era. Since the Chinese scripts were inherently non-phonetic, they were the best tools for transcription of the non-Chinese language, and attempts at creating a new alphabetic phonetic written language or empire building proved unsuccessful on three separate occasions. So the general characteristics through cultural contacts, Chinese through cultural contacts, the Chinese literature has profoundly influenced the literary traditions of other Asian countries, particularly in Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Not only was the Chinese script adapted for written language in these countries, but some writers adapted the Chinese language as their chief literary medium at least before 20th century. First dynasty was the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty during this time, the people practiced a religion based on the belief that nature was inhabited by many powerful gods and spirits. Among the significant advances of this period were bronze working, decimal system, a 12-month calendar, and a system of writing consisting of 3,000 characters. The Shang dynasty was about 1700s to 1050 before Christ era, or the development of Chinese writing. The first dynasty, for which there is historical record and archaeological evidence, is the Shang dynasty. It was a small empire in northern central China. No documents from the country survive, but there are archaeological finds of hieroglyphic writing on bronzewares and oracle bones. The hieroglyphic writing system later evolved into ideographic and partly phonetic Chinese writing. The Shang dynasty was about 1700s to 1050 before Christ era, or the development of Chinese writing. The first dynasty, for which there is historical record and archaeological evidence, is the Shang dynasty. It was a small empire in northern central China. No documents from the country survive, but there are archaeological finds of hieroglyphic writing on bronzewares and oracle bones. The hieroglyphic writing system later evolved into ideographic and partly phonetic Chinese writing. Next is the Chao dynasty, or also known as the philosophical and religious literature, evolved in 1045 to 255 BC. So the Chao dynasty severe political and disunity upheaval, and throughout most of this period, China suffered from this. This was the longest dynasty of all the dynasties. The Chao dynasty was contemporaneous with the Shang dynasty, and then they conquered the Shang dynasty. Their dynasty lasted about 800 years, but for most of the times, their original territory was broken up into dozens of competing kingdoms, and then this finally coalesced into several big and warring kingdoms by the end of the Chao era. The great literary works of philosophy and religion that became the basis for the Chinese religious and social belief stem, which from what is called the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, and the Taoism, Confucian literature, and other prominent religious and philosophical schools all emerged during these two periods. The next dynasty was the Qin dynasty, evolved in 221 to 206 before Christ, also known as the literary disasters and legalism. The Qin dynasty, this period saw the unification of China and the strengthening of central government. Roads connecting all parts of the empire were built, and the existing walls on the northern borders were connected to form the Great Wall of China. At the end of the Zhou Dynasty era, that is the called the Warring States period of the surviving few big states in the land, the Qin Dynasty became the most powerful. The Qin Dynasty had big armies and conquered the others. Once the Qin Emperor had control, he wanted to keep it and be squished in any position to his authority. In the conquered territories, there were teachers of many different doctrines and religions about the topics at hand. The speaker in the poem is upset about his or her situation. The next piece was the Parables of the Ancient Philosophers. The Parables of Ancient Philosophers illustrates that the Taoist belief and the humanism that Chinese taught. In them can be seen the relativity of all things as they pass through man's judgment, the virtues of flexibility and the drawbacks of the material progress. The sayings of Chinese philosophers are often vague so that their meaning is almost boundless. This does not mean that metaphysical ideas are absent from Chinese thought. An example of an important text of metaphysics in the Chinese tradition is the obscure document named I Ching, or the Book of Changes. Some Chinese use the Book of Changes as the manual of divination. Those who could not understand its message, it was believed, would grasp all the laws of nature. Rather than expressing their thoughts in logical and systematic prose, Chinese thinkers tended to be poetical. They do not display a strong concern in providing strict rules. The ideas tend to be guidelines only. Texts on Chinese philosophy are often filled with aphorism, allusions, and parables. The general tendency is to be the suggestive. The more an expression is articulated, the less suggestive it is. The sayings and writings of Chinese philosophers are, therefore, often vague so that their meaning is almost boundless. That's all for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you understand I am lack of materials and everything, and I have to go here to Beard, and yeah, I hope everyone is safe from their home. See you guys soon.